So, this is the final session.
Oh, no.
I'm sad. It's the final session today. Everything we've talked about today has been about igniting growth in different ways, whether it's through small companies that have become big, like Oatly, whether it's through companies that have reimagined themselves to remain relevant, like Guinness, through innovation, whether it's a more mature, established company like Cadbury's that's been around for 200 years. It's all been about growth and the tactics you can employ to go from marginal to mainstream to achieve that growth. But not all growth is equal. There's kind of breakthrough growth. That's what I loved about the Oatly story, is how do you actually do it in practice? And that's what this sort of 10 to 15 minutes is going to be about. We've got three brilliant people, Helen, John, and Meredith from our Futures Consulting division, who have been, there's really an opportunity to get postcards from the hyper-growth frontline. And I'm going to make this tough, okay, because we've not got much time. You're only allowed 60-second answers. We're only going to ask 5 questions. We're going to do this quick. You up for that? Okay, there we go. If they say yes, we've got to do it. Okay, so, number one question.
You looking at me?
Okay, what's the number one thing? I'm going to start with John, I think. What's the number one thing you see brands getting wrong and limiting their growth as a result?
Maybe they're taking themselves too seriously. They're trying to be brands. They're hiding behind their logo. There's a lot of things. They're not really coming across as being real. I think that's the whole thing. They're buying packages of data, the same data that the competitors are buying, and they're thinking that's enough to get them some great creative idea. I mean, there's a lot of things that, again, the 90% of, for me, is like most people are in that world, and it's great for brands that aren't because it makes it so much easier to stick out. So, luckily, some of these things are easy to fix. Other things are harder because there's a sense of security built into that.
Meredith.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more when you talk about, with Oatly, a brand needing to act like a living, breathing thing. I think to add to that, making sure that you're balancing search with stability. Having a plan and not spending 5% of your time, your effort, your eyeballs, looking for signals that are coming from the outside in. They're coming from the margins. They're coming from different sectors, different categories, parts of the world. Just having a laser focus is key, but it's going to help you continue to incrementally do what you're doing. You have to give yourself the permission, just 5 to 10% of your time, to look out so that you can start planning for what might succeed in the future, not just sticking to the one strategy you have now.
Helen, what's the one thing you see brands getting wrong?
I think over collaborating, frankly. There's too much asking each other and meeting and deciding. And sometimes, with respect, over-researching. Research just can kill. Bad research can kill good ideas. And it's better to get out there and try something and move and adapt and move forward than it is to keep researching, collaborating. And I think that holds a lot of companies back. And I know why. It's because they're shareholders at the end of all of this. But there must be a way through, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? It's not all research is created equal, not all insight is created equal.
Limited budget helps that. If you don't have any money, you have to choose. I think companies with smaller budgets have much better chance of when you got a lot of money, then you can start playing all the safety, hitting the safety buttons. And so for some companies you have to, but I think we're most effective when our budget was like really, really tiny, because it made a lot of choices for us.
Yeah, that's interesting. And like our whole decision-making process is sort of compressed. So, but it introduces risk, or feel the potential risk, right? So, the next question: is it better is it better to avoid failing or to fail fast?
Okay, sure. So here's my whole thing: is you have to fail. It's the greatest thing you can ever do. It's the only way to move forward. And even the worst failures, sometimes they I'll give you guys an example. This is a great failure on my part.
Tell us more.
No, but we did our first packaging sides, and one of them says, it tastes like shit, but it didn't say shit. It said SH asterisk T. And we ran it in Sweden. Everyone loved that one because you say shit all the time. And then it was on Waitrose and Sainsbury's, and the first complaint came in, I can't believe you use profanity on your products. And I said, I'll answer that one. So I wrote back to this consumer like, hey, your daughter's going to read this, but, you know, shit is the third most used word in the English language, so it's a good chance to, like, have a good morning situation and tell them what that means and stuff. And I said, oh. And then a bunch more came in, and Waitrose pulled all our products, like, every single product off the... And it's like, we were small at that time. Like, and I remember we were in Chicago trying to set up the U.S., and we got, like, they're pulling all our products off. That's a lot of money. And the thing was is that we learned that lesson. Don't put certain things on your packaging that can get everything pulled off. And it was like great because we were going to have a lot more years of actually, and it's like, that was total failure. Like some people would say, you should be fired. It's like, no, it was like, we thought it was funny. It didn't really work in that particular market. Mm-hmm. We understand that, take it out and learn from it. So that's part of culture where everyone, please fail, just don't do the same thing. Yes.
I mean, it can definitely sound trite, but, you know, in that innovation language, failing is learning. So when we talk about that not all research is created equal, you're also trying to gather information from all the activities that you're doing. So, you know, does your team have the capabilities to actually learn from that failure? Are you paying attention to where you land and what worked and what didn't in terms of the role that you play in culture? So,
but isn't it awful though? I mean, failing's awful. And I would really rather not.
Yeah.
And I think we'd all really rather not, but it's part of life. I think the thing that I object to is that thing when people go, okay, let's just move on. And I'm like, no, let's not move on. I'm not moving anywhere. And I kind of said to my kids, let's look deep into how this happened and make sure we avoid it again. Because I think it's too easy when things do go wrong to go, okay, that was then, it's time to move on, everybody. And I think we don't spend enough time not moving on, but actually digging in and going, actually, before we move on, let's really understand what went wrong here and just make sure that we know it so that we don't do it again. Because failing is crap. I mean, what's...
But sometimes I know that, like, we would do a bunch of ads, and I would always say, like, some of them have to be bad to make the other ones look really good. And so someone said, I don't like that ad. Oh, well, the next one will be so much better. And so you can play with failure. It depends. If it's crazy failure, no, I don't know. I don't want to be around crazy.
If you're experimenting to understand how a small group of people react to something, if you're testing the waters and seeing how real behavior happens, that's really a way to de-risk that decision. And so you don't have to put all of your eggs into that basket. Say, well, if we're going to fail, let's fail down quite a few set of stairs. If you're taking more small actions to test and to see, then it will be learning rather than a kind of colossal.
And one of the things that today is all about is about being meaningfully different to more people. That's what we said right up front. And what I love about the examples that we've had, and I think Oatly really epitomizes this in particular, is that you violently embrace being meaningfully different in everything that you do. And but being different can be a bit scary. And I suppose it's true of what you were talking about in terms of the marginal behaviors, right? So how do you conquer that feeling of scariness in doing stuff that's bold, stuff that's breakthrough, stuff that's different? How do you do it?
I think it comes back to the thing that marketers have to be really good at, and that's about knowing people, knowing about people, and knowing your customers. And I know it sounds kind of trite in a room of marketers, but if you really know them as people, not just as consumers, but really know them as people, then you know what you're doing is going to be relevant and it's going to add value to their lives. That's the other thing, is this making money for me or is it adding value to their lives? Then I think it makes the whole thing less scary. I know them and I know I'm adding value to their lives. And I think for me, those are the important things to get right.
Oh, I just think you need to take the money out of the equation and things get a lot less scary. I think it's scary that something's not scary. You know what I mean? Because then you're doing something that goes unnoticed. Mm-hmm. we have this thing of being consistently inconsistent in everything we do. And everyone's like, what do you mean? And it's just like, well, I don't want anyone to know what's coming next because they might get bored. And so everything that we're doing is scary. And we ran a campaign here called Help Dads, and it kind of targeted middle-aged men. And it was like, that was scary. That got a lot of press. There were a lot of middle-aged men that felt targeted for drinking milk. But I mean, again, that's part of the intention to create societal debate about certain things. So not doing that just means she might go unnoticed.
Yeah, and you know, when you're making those decisions, I think part of it, I mean, you know, we heard it from Cadbury around, look, if the story doesn't have a unique reason to talk about the product or the brand, it's not a story for us. I think part of that being different is giving yourself the filter that means you don't have to chase every change. You don't have to chase a difference that another brand or another sector has achieved. You have to have that filter on to give yourself the permission to say, I'm watching change happen. I'm seeing the signals. I'm seeing the cultural change happen. I know about it, what matters to us and what doesn't. What creates a risk of inaction and what's a unique space we could own. And so that difference shouldn't feel like a chain around your neck that you're dragging yourself into constantly reinventing. It's about being who you are as the world around you is changing. Sorry, I'm gesticulating, so I'm very passionate about it. I'm voguing the difference.
Well, the final question, and we'll be around around during and after lunch to chat more. What's your favourite marginal behaviour?
Oh, well, most interesting, I would say, rather than favorite. So, you know, in this world where we're constantly online, one of the things that I think has been really wild is to watch, you know, 8 and 10-year-old girls around the world starting to adopt these skincare regimens, and I have a lot of, when I see some of these marginal behaviors, I wonder the continued ripple effects of our kind of constantly online life. What are these kids going to be like, and what are they going to have about their self-image, what's important to them by the time they're 20, 30, 40? So I wouldn't advocate for it, but I find it deeply fascinating.
I don't know what to do with the marginal behaviors. I was looking at the screen and I was like, if you did 50 and there's only 15 up here, where are the 35 really marginal? Because your own urine to me is pretty marginal. And I don't know how far that's going to go. So yeah. I just think it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating, these marginal behaviors. And microdosing is one I think that's coming more quickly because you're hearing it more often. I'm not really in a group of people that are like no-soapers. But there could be a lot of different things. And the thing is, we laugh at these things at first. And that's what makes them so interesting. Without these marginal, I'm not answering your question, but
you kind of are.
Without these marginal groups, I think the world is so boring. I absolutely love it. I want to see the other 35.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, and what you said about how younger generations, like if we look at how Gen Z is wired a little bit differently in some cases, they're less desire to conform and more openness. Yeah, means that they're not asking for the rest of the world's permission to try something new that we might find in 20 years is something we can't imagine our life before.
It was fascinating watching Gen Z. We watched Gen Zs when we put insect protein in front of groups, and sort of older people would go, "Oh, disgusting, that's so weird." And the Gen Zs, you could see they wanted to do that, and then they went, I think that would be fine for other people. But you can see their initial reaction was the same. It was sort of like, wow, okay. I don't know which one is for me, but what I would say is my students that I taught last year gave me a very special chocolate bar as a present at the end of the course that they'd sourced somewhere in Shoreditch.
The one with the crickets.
Yeah, there's enough crickets in it. But it was natural.
I kind of want to keep talking for hours with these guys. You guys are absolute superstars. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, John. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you, Tom.